Hi, I'm Charly Stanton, and I'm here today with Mendix's Chief Marketing Officer, Nick Ford. So today we're going to be talking about low-code, digital transformation, and the key factors for success. Hi, Nick. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Charlie. Thanks for having me.
So my first question. Digital transformation can mean something different to everyone. We hear many people ask, should they optimize or should they transform? Which obviously involves balancing current processes whilst taking on new ventures. So, where do you start?
I think the interesting thing is that digital transformation is a journey. It's not a destination. So the important thing is we have to think of it as a journey. And it's played out against a backdrop of finite time and resources, so access to people. So there's a sort of immediacy that people are thinking about when they talk about digital transformation. And what I think is important, whether you're optimizing, whether you're transforming your landscape, or whether you're launching new business models, the important thing is to treat it like a journey, and it has to have a starting point. So where do you start? I think what we've learned over the years is that there's a tendency for organizations to go and try and solve the biggest, most difficult problems first, because they tend to be sort of foundational. You think of them as, if we can get those right, then obviously the transformation comes off the back of that. But what we found is that often those projects aren't the most successful. They're almost too difficult to solve. And there's so much learning that needs to take place as part of that process. So learning not just about producing an outcome, which is digital, but learning how to create a repeatable process for becoming digital. So I'd advocate taking it slightly steadier at the beginning. Pick a use case that certainly has high visibility, something that you think will move the needle from a business perspective, but you can deliver in a small number of sort of months, weeks and months. Bring together a cross-functional team, give them plenty of access to domain expertise, and allow them the sort of breadth and depth to experiment and perhaps fail a little bit along the way. So starting small, keeping it a focus on a deliverable and learning as you go, I think is incredibly important.
Interesting. So you mentioned about starting with a kind of simple use case to begin with. Could you give a couple of examples of what would be a good business process to start with?
Yeah, well, I think it's not necessarily about simplicity. It's about taking something that you feel that is achievable, but also has significant enough impact on the business. So I'm not advocating that we do something that isn't meaningful. It has to be. So maybe take a look forward to something that you weren't able to get to market because of the time and cost associated with it, and maybe it was experimental. But if you could do that, then it would actually make a difference for the business. So examples from our customers are, dealing with portals, for example, access to customers, bringing customers into straight-through processing, maybe looking at processes that automate some of the interface between your employees and external customers, and treating it almost like a minimum viable product, so that you can actually deliver something that gives significant amount of value in a short period of time. But the most important thing for me is not necessarily the outcome, but it's the learning that goes with the process. What did you learn as you went through that initial engagement? Because that's what will set you up for success as you start to scale out your operations and broaden your digital initiatives. So one example is the city of Rotterdam, 650,000 residents, and they've built, I think, over 100 applications. But one that springs to mind for me is the RBZ portal. Provides funding, access to funding for entrepreneurs. I think the solution was built in 2 weeks, and in the first week processed over 20,000 applications. So there's an example of something that really has significant impact delivered in a really condensed period of time. And as an example of something that would garner support and success, I think you could celebrate that and use that as an example of what good transformational initiatives look like, and learn from that.
From what you've seen in your role, how are organizations tackling the idea of digital transformation being an endless journey? What should they consider as critical factors for success?
Well, I think there are many factors. I mean, if you look at the maturity of your own organization and the industry as a whole, every organization is different. It really depends on the dynamics. It depends on your competition, the maturity of your business, depends on who's disrupting who and how. So I think it's important to really be situationally aware, first of all, and that will depend on the kinds of initiatives you want to take, whether you're dealing with, launching new business models or you're really looking at optimizing your processes. So I think that's really down to the organization. One thing that I think is incredibly important is to be able to bring transformation alive with language. So you need a common language that enables you to both articulate what you mean by transformation, but also to empower the organization. So everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet. They know what we're talking about when we talk about transformation and the initiatives that we're embarking on. So that ability to bring that to life is important. This might seem strange as a technology provider in Mendix, but I think the most important point is to not start with technology. We often see companies think that by applying technology to the problem, there's an easy fix, it's almost a silver bullet to embarking on that transformational journey. And again, I think what that does is it sucks a lot of the resources and often to the wrong problems that we talked about in the first question, and leaves little resource to really think about some of the core foundational problems. So I'd advocate looking initially at the people, the process, and the product. So really understand what you mean on those three dimensions when you talk about transformation, and then bring some language to life, which allows you to articulate how you want to approach those three areas. So looking at things like new business models, looking at partnerships for success, maybe channels to market, customers and customer segmentation, and then revenue streams. So almost a sort of business model canvas that you can start to think about that. That will help you with the language, and it'll certainly help you, I think, with the journey that you need to embark on as you begin to implement some of the ideas and initiatives that will come out of that assessment phase.
Brilliant. Thank you. So final question. How do you establish that common language? What does it look like? How do you help to balance between short-term goals and long-term strategies?
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I mean, over the last 16 years that we've been in business, we've helped many organizations from the early days of building, solutions to solve business problems to now transforming their organization through the Mendix platform. And what we've found is that there's a particular methodology that works for our customers, and I think it's in part something that takes into account some of the things I've mentioned. So for us, we talk about the 3 S's. So the ability to start, structure, and scale. So it starts by having a vision. It starts by mapping out that journey, scripting the path, looking for the bright spots, which we've talked about already, and then starting small and celebrating. So that initial cross-functional team that we talked about, focusing on something that has real value, giving them the breadth to be able to experiment is the sort of start phase. What you learn in that phase is then what you'll take into what I think is a structure phase. So how do you then structure the organization, take the learnings from that initial project, and use that to structure how you move forward, and also how the friction that you experience during that process. So bring that to life with language, and also bring that to life with organizational change. Only when you've done that can you then move to the scale phase, and rather than jumping right into the scale phase. So vision, execution, then inside that are sort of 4 dimensions for me. Again, comes back to people, process, portfolio, and platform. So what kind of people, how do you get multidisciplinary teams working together? You'll have domain expertise working alongside IT and technology. How do they communicate? That common language comes back. What are they actually trying to achieve together? So I think focusing on the people, we all know that talent is the big differentiator when it comes to delivering anything, let alone just digital transformation. A clear understanding of the portfolio. What kinds of initiatives are important as part of your transformational journey now, and what are not. More importantly, what are things I'm not going to do, so I can create the space to do the things that are really important, and I can learn and map out my journey. And then the platform comes underneath that. So technology underpins all of that. So a platform that supports that ability to be able to manage not just the development and accelerated development and agility, but also the methodology that's used to to ensure that you're successful over time. Because as we said, this is a journey and you need to adapt to the terrain. So learning is part of the challenge for me. And we've seen success where we've implemented that kind of structure and the language that goes with it. So take PVH, a large retail conglomerate who own brands like Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger. They've used the Mendix platform to build multiple solutions on top of SAP. It always reminds me of the Gartner Pace-led model with systems of record, differentiation, innovation. So building on top of core systems is a great example where you can differentiate and innovate. They took a manual process that processed 180,000 approvals annually and replaced that with a Mendix solution that integrates with multiple systems, SAP, Workday, and I think Coupa was the other solution they integrated with. So one good example of where a platform like Mendix can really add some value and be done in an agile and low-code way.
Good example. This has been super useful. Thank you so much for coming in today. Is there any final comments, anything you'd like to add?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. I think the final thing to add is, just get started. The most important thing is, it is a journey. Get started, take the first step, and hopefully the rest will come.
Brilliant. Thank you so much again for coming today.
My pleasure.